In comics, but he was born and he lived, a real person. Barbara Robinson, the best Christmas pageant ever. Welcome and good morning. We come together in this space, which was a homeland for Native people usurped by the Puritans who built this church. We wish to pay respect to those who lived and breathed in the Massachusetts and Wampanoag territories by holding a moment of silence. I invite you to take a breath. Whoever you are, and wherever you come from, and wherever you are on your journey in life, we welcome you to this place. I am Raleigh Beaver, and I was elected minister of First Church and Parish in March of 2007, and moved into the parsonage in July, so I've been here moving on 17 years. If you are visiting for the first time, we hope you will sign our guest book in the vestibule of this building and get a welcome packet from our usher today is Susan Sennett. After service today, we're holding a special fall meeting of the church and parish. All members are encouraged to attend and friends are invited to attend. It won't take long. This will be followed by a social hour that will take place in the dining room of the parish house. Everyone is invited to stay and visit with one another. Please note that we are now locking the doors to our parish house during the service to increase the safety to our buildings. If you need access to the parish hall, you may ask Susan Sennett, our usher, during the service. We are also collecting hats and mittens and gloves for Renewal House. Renewal House is a UU home for women who are escaping domestic violence, and each year we bring gift cards so the women might buy presents for their families. and also make sure they have warm hats, mittens, and scarves. We will extend the giving season for Renewal House until next Sunday, where we'll have a mitten tree in service, and so you have a whole other week to gather your donations and bring them to church. Deb Harrison, would you like to make John Oratory announcement?
It's an obstacle course up here today. So good morning. So this Friday night, John Oratory is coming, plays classical guitar. He has a wide variety of pieces he's going to be performing. They're all with the holiday season or thereabouts. And 7:30, $20. Bring your friends, bring your neighbors. It lasts about an hour, and we'll have a reception in the parish house afterwards. So please come. If you're not into the Christmas spirit, this is a good beginning.
We will now begin our worship with our first hymn, which is, what is it? It's Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly, and it will be the hanging of our greens. If the greens drop down beside you, please wrap them around the pole near where you're sitting.
Our last worship.
turkey? And will somebody find someone to run the potluck for the holiday?
My mother was put in charge of the Christmas pageant. Now, our Christmas pageant isn't what you'd call four-star entertainment. Mrs. Armstrong breaking her leg was the only exciting thing that ever happened to it. The script is standard: the inn, the stable, the shepherds, the star, and so are the costumes, and so is the casting. The primary kids are angels and lambs. Intermediate kids are the shepherds. Big kids are the wise men. Elmer Hopkins, the minister's son, has been Joseph for as long as I can remember. And my friend, Alice Mendelkin, is Mary because she's so smart and neat, clean, and most of all, so holy. All the rest of us are the angel choir, lined up according to height because nobody can sit parts. But this year was different. Elmer Hopkins had told the Herdman kids that there would be cake in the rehearsal, and suddenly they all wanted to be the Christmas gathering. Now, the gossip around town was that the Herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. Word on the street was that they lied, they stole, they smoked cigars, they talked dirty, they hit little kids, they cussed at their teachers, and some even said they set fire to Fred Shoemaker's old broken down tool house. It was a terrific fire. 2 engines and 2 police cars and all the volunteer fire department. But it turns out, though, the neighbors had been pestering Mr. Shoemaker to do something about the old tool house because it was about to fall down anyway. So they said the fire was a blessing in disguise. My father said that it was the only good thing the Herdmans ever did, and if they knew it was a good thing, they wouldn't have done it at all. I was always in the same grade with Imogene Herdman, and what I did was stay out of her way. You couldn't do it if you were very pretty, very ugly, or very smart, or very dumb, or anything unusual about you like double-jointed thumbs. But if you were a medium kid like me, and you kept your mouth shut, you did okay. We all figured the Herdman kids were headed straight to hell, or something worse, until they got themselves mixed up in the church, my mother, and our Christmas pageant. Please remain seated and sing hymn 256 from your grace and love, Mr. Neck.
short and nights are long, dark and cold, light in our hearts the light of faith. And give us the courage to learn from the darkness when we are alone and afraid, and turn again to light with courage and with faith.
At the first meeting, my mother started by asking for volunteers.
I know that many of you would like to be Mary in our pageant, but of course, we can only have one Mary. It should be someone who is quiet and gentle and kind. So I'll ask for volunteers, and then we'll all decide together which girl should get the part.
That was pretty safe to say, since the only person who ever raised her hand was Aunt Alice Wendell. But Alice just sat there, chewing on a piece of her hair and looking down at the floor. And the only person who raised her hand this time was Imogene Herdman.
Did you have a question, Imogene? No, I want to be married and Ralph wants to be Joseph.
Thank you, God.
Alice, don't you want to be married this year?
Mother just stared at them. She couldn't believe this. What she didn't know was that Imogene had bullied Alice into letting her be married. Nobody volunteered to be the wise men either, except Leroy, Claude, and Olive Herdman. And Gladys was going to be the angel of the Lord. So there was my mother, stuck with a Christmas pageant full of Herdmans in the main roles. Some people said it wasn't fair for the whole family who didn't even go to our church to barge in and take over the pageant. My mother just said she'd rather be in the hospital with Mrs. Armstrong. But when Mrs. Armstrong heard what was going on, she nearly fell out of her bed, traction bars and all.
Excuse me, what?
She said that if she had been up and around, the whole thing would never happen. And that made my mother so mad she couldn't see straight.
That woman! Helen Armstrong is not the only woman alive who can run a Christmas pageant. I made up my mind to do the very best I could under the circumstances, but now I'm going to make this the very best Christmas pageant ever. And I'm going to do it with the Herdmans too. After all, they raised their hands and no one else did. And that's that.
Yes.
An offering to support the care and ministry of this church will now be given. We gratefully receive. her.
Ow!
But Mother said she was going to ignore everything except blood. And since the little girl wasn't bleeding, and neither was I, nothing happened. Even so, right away, Mother ran into trouble.
Who were the shepherds and where did they come from? What was the inn? What's an inn?
It's like a motel where people go to spend the night. What people? Jesus?
Oh, honestly, Jesus wasn't even born yet. Mary and Joseph just went there.
Why? What happened first? Begin at the beginning.
The thing was, the Herdmans didn't know anything about the Christmas story. They knew that Christmas was Jesus' birthday, but everything else was news to them. The shepherds, the wise men, the star, the stable, the crowded inn. So Mother said she better begin by reading the story from the Bible. This was a pain in the neck for most of us because we knew the whole thing backwards and forwards.
Joseph and Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child.
Pregnant! I don't think it's very nice to say Mary was pregnant.
But she was.
My mom said that I'm not supposed to talk about people being pregnant. I'm going to tell her.
Oh, what?
Hey, your mom's talking about that stuff in church.
I was pretty sure she would too because she still wanted to be married. But there wasn't much I could do about it but pinch Alice.
You mean there wasn't any room in the inn? Not even for Jesus? Well, after all, nobody knew the baby was going to turn out to be Jesus.
You said Mary knew. Why didn't she tell them?
I would have told them. Why would I have told them? What was the matter with Joseph that he didn't tell them?
Her pregnant and everything?
What was that they laid the baby in? The manger? Is that like a bed? How would they have a bed in a barn?
Well, that's just the point. They didn't have a bed in the barn, so Mary and Joseph had to use whatever there was. What would you do if you had a new baby and you didn't have a bed to put it in?
You put Gladys in the dresser drawer.
Well, there you are. You didn't have a bed for Gladys, so you had to use something else. Mary and Joseph used a manger. A manger is a large wooden feeding trough for animals.
What were the violent clothes?
The what?
Violent clothes. You read about it. She wrapped him in violent clothes.
Swaddling clothes. Long ago, people used to wrap their babies very tightly in big pieces of material so they couldn't move around. It made the babies feel cozy and comfortable.
Why did Mary get named?
I named it. Joseph didn't name the baby either. God sent an angel to tell Mary what his name should be.
I would have named him Bill. What did the angel do? Just walk up and say, name him Jesus?
Mother was in a hurry to finish, so she said,
Yes.
but then Alice went looking at it over her big mouth.
I know what the angel said. She said, his name shall be called the Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
I could have hit her.
My God, he never got out of first grade if he had to write all that.
And so it went, Mother telling the story and explaining it to the Herdmans. They were really interested in Herod. When Mother said that Herod planned to put the baby Jesus to death, Imogen exclaimed,
My God, he just got born already and they're out to kill him?
I figured they were interested in Herod because they liked him. He was so mean, he could have been their ancestor, Herod Herdman. But I was wrong. They wanted somebody to be Herod so they could beat up on. I couldn't understand the Herdmans. You would have thought the Christmas story came right out of Law and Order. They got so involved in it. They wanted a bloody end to Herod, worried about Mary having a baby in a barn, and called the wise men a bunch of spies. After she finished the story, we got through the first rehearsal. Reverend Hopkins asked Mother if we should call the whole thing off. He said the whole church was in an uproar because of the Herdmans, and he didn't think anyone would come to see the pageant. But he was wrong. Everybody came to see what the Herdmans would do. Please remain seated and sing hymn 249 on this day everywhere.
This is the code once light in our hearts, the light of love.
Remember, the parents of Jesus were neither rich, nor powerful, nor famous. That from the most humble beginnings, any kid can come who carries within him seeds of greatness and a great life.
Help us remember that in each of us burns a flame which brightens the world.
Let us enter into a moment of silent prayer and meditation.
I'm sorry. Woo! Okay, all right. Back in here. The night of the pageant, there was the usual big mess all over the place. People forgetting their scripts, baby angels getting poked in the eye with other baby angel wings, and grumpy shepherds tripping over their costumes. But everything settled down, and at 10:31, the pageant began.
What have they got?
I don't know, but it looks heavy.
I knew this would happen. I bet something awful. I bet it's something awful, like a burnt offering.
They hadn't heard this yet. It was a ham. And right away, I knew where it came from. The local grocery store had a ham giveaway at Christmas. And this was one of those hams.
I bet they stole it.
The Herdmans had never before in their lives given anything away except what's on the head. So you had to be impressed. When it was time for the wise men to leave, the Herdmans forgot, or didn't want to or something, because they didn't leave. They just sat there. There wasn't anything anyone could do about it.
They're ruining the whole thing.
As a matter of fact, it made perfect sense for the wise men to sit down and rest. They had come a long way. As for ruining the whole thing, it seemed to me that the Herdmans had improved it a lot, just by doing what came naturally, like burping the baby, for instance, or thinking a ham would make a better present than a lot of perfumed oil.
At this time of giving gifts, lovingly made and carefully chosen, at this time of sharing with one another that which is deepest and dearest, lighten our hearts in light of love.
Heal our hearts, the wound of misunderstandings, mistakes, and rendered help us to reach out with joy for the gifts which life and love offers us.
Sustain our hopes that as we work together toward beginning everyone into a circle of one human family.
Grant us each a wise and understanding heart.
I almost wish for the pageant to go on with the Herdmans in charge to see what else they would do that was different. Maybe the wise men would tell Mary about their problems with Herod, and she would tell them to go back and bite their heads off. Or Joseph might go with them and get rid of Herod once and for all. I was so busy planning new ways to save the baby Jesus, I didn't notice Imogene at first. When I did, I almost got my hymn book on baby angel. Imogene Herdman was crying. In the candlelight, her face was all shiny with tears, and she didn't even bother to wipe them away. She just sat there, awful old Imogene, in her crooked veil, crying and crying and crying. I guess Christmas just came over her all at once, like a case of chills or fever. And so she was crying. Please remain seated and sing hymn 251, Silent Night.
Thank you.
be. And the wise men are always going to be Leroy and his brothers, Barry and Pam. When we came out of the church that night, it was cold and clear, with crunchy snow underfoot and bright, bright stars overhead. And I thought about the angel of the Lord, Gladys, with her skinny legs and her dirty sneakers sticking out from under her robe, yelling at all of us everywhere, "Hey, unto you a child is born!" Okay,